Hi guys, in today's video it will be on a 2025 wish list. And I'm recording this wish list after Hornby's announcement in January. We'll call it part 1 and the backing one in February. So some of these still may get announced during 2024. So let's get into the wish list. And GWR or Great Western. Let's start with a retool. This first retool is a Saint class or the Great Western 2900 class. And as you may have guessed, being a retool, it means there was a model before, and there was by Hornby many years ago from the 80s and 90s, and it was tender driven. With the announcement of some of Great Western's best locomotive, from the Kings, the Castles, the Manors, the large prairies, the small prairies, and even some of the freight locomotives that manufacturers have announced, the Saint class does need modernising, upgrading to modern standards. A little bit of history: there was 77 of these built between 1902 1913. None of them were saved, but one has been rebuilt at the Bluebell Railway, I believe, and I believe it's the Lady of the Lake or something like that. So there is one around, and it did have several versions of a Saint class. So we had the Scott series, we had the Ladies series, we had the Saints, we had the Courts as well. So Hornby, or any manufacturer, not just Hornby, any manufacturer, there is a place in the market for these lovely looking locomotives. Another retooled item from the Great Western would have to be the County class or the 1000 class. Yes, in Hornby's 2024 Part 1, they did announce one in a railroad train pack, but I believe that again is the old tooled version. Again, it needs to be modernised, it needs to be brought up to modern standards, again with the Saints. There was 30 of these built in real life between August 1945 and April 1947. Sadly, all of them were scrapped, but there is a replica being made in real life. I don't think there was any subclasses, but I believe there was a county tank, if you have that correct. So yeah, that's the Great Western 1000 class. On to new tooled. Again, some of these you would have heard before from me. So I have 4 new tooled here, just because 3 of them are just a one-off. So we have the Great Bear, which was the first Pacific in the UK. Again, it's a key part of the history of the Great Western and British railway history, basically. We also have Great Western styled streamlined locomotives. They did 2, which is the King and Castle, again with the W1 and turbo motive, and even Big M or Big Bertha. These prototypes or one-offs from the Big 4 or pre-grouping or BR, whatever, do need to be made in ready to run so everyone can have one. So that's my first pick for new tooled. My next new tooled item I would like to see is the Great Western 2600 class, which is a Aberdare class. I believe it's a Mogul. It's a 260. They were built between 1900 and 1907. These were a freight version of, I believe, the City class. So imagine the City class as a Mogul. I think these would look quite lovely actually in a Great Western livery. There was 81 of these produced in real life. They were withdrawn by 1949, and sadly all of them were scrapped. They did make it into BR, which again is a great thing for manufacturers when they look at models to do. So yeah, that's the 2600 class by the Great Western. On to the LNER now. The first retooled locomotive I'd like to see retooled is the Class J39. Currently, Bachmann do or don't have it in their range. It's a bit hard to tell. I believe it is a split chassis design. I'll give you some facts on the class. So they were designed by Nigel Gredley between 1928 and 1941. 289 of these were made in real life. There was several subclasses. We had the J39/1/2/3. The wheel configuration is the 060 tender, so it's a tender locomotive. They operated under the London and North East Railway and the British Railway. They are, I think, a 4F or 5F in real life. They would have been Sadly, all of these were scrapped in real life. The amount there was, they were sadly all scrapped. Like I said, I believe Bachmann do or don't make one in their range, but at some point there was, and it was a J39/2. Again, it's crying out for a new retooled version, if I'm honest with you. So that is the LNER class J39. The next retooled locomotive is the Great Northern N2, but I'm going to cheat here and put the N1 in as well, which you've heard me say that before on other wish lists I have done. So the Great Northern class N1 came first in the line of command here. So I'll give you some facts about that. It was designed by Henry Ivert at Doncaster Works between 1906 and 1912. 56 of these were produced. The wheel configuration for these and the N2s are the same. 062T, so it's a tank engine. I believe there were a few subclasses as well with these. They operated under the Great Northern, the London North Eastern Railway and the British Railway. They are a 2MT by British standards, and they were scrapped. The other one I said was the N2, which was a slight redesign on the N1. The facts are basically the same. Currently, Hornby do an N2 in a slight railroad version. It's missing quite a lot of modern features, but it's still a good runner. So it was designed by Nigel Gresley. There were some subclasses, so we had the N2/1, N2/2, N2/3, and N2/4. They were built between 1920 and 1929. There was 107 of these produced, split into their series, like I just said. They operated under the Great Northern, London and North Eastern Railway, and the British Railway. These are a slightly more powerful locomotive. They are 3MT under BR. One of these is preserved, and the rest are sadly scrapped. Like I said, Hornby currently do one of these, but they don't do an N1. Let's move on to the LNER new tool. I wouldn't mind seeing. Again, this is one I've said before, and others have said when manufacturers put a post out saying what locos would you like us to see to do in our ranges, etc., etc. And this is the North Eastern Railway A2. It's a Raven A2. It is a Pacific locomotive. So there was only 5 of these built. There was 2 in 1922 and 3 in 1924. The wheel configuration being a Pacific is a 462. They were all withdrawn by 1937. None of them made it to BR, but did make it to the London North Eastern Railway. But sadly, they were scrapped. This is one of the locomotives I would like to see. It's a missing link in the LNER Pacific chain, along with a few tank engines. And they were named as well. We had names like City of Durham, City of York, City of Newcastle, City of Ripton. So yeah, it's a nice, pretty locomotive. That is the Raven A2. Another new tooled item is another pre-grouping one I would like to see. And that is the Great Central Railway 8B, or later the LNER Class C4. This was designed by John Robinson, and a total of 27 were produced between 1903 and 1906. These are an Atlantic. They are 442. I don't think there was any subclasses as such, but I think there was, looking down, I think there's a C4/2, I think there's a C4/3 and a C4/4. I think it's all different pressures of boilers by the looks of it. They operated under the Great Central Railway, the LNER and the BR. They are only a 2P under the BR. They were withdrawn before 1950, and sadly all of these were scrapped. Again, it's an Atlantic. We do have quite a few Atlantics out there, and this is a nice looking one again, and that is the Great Central Railway 8B. LMS. Now let's start with a retool, and this retool is the LMS Fowler Class 3F, or the Ginty. Both Bachmann and Hornby do make one, and they are very basic, again, compared to modern day steam locomotives. So these were designed by Henry Fowler. They were built between 1924 and 1931, and there was 422 of these produced. They operated under the London, Midland and Scottish Railway, even the Somerset and Dorset Joint Railway. We have a War Department, we also have a French Railway, and we have a National Coal Board and British Railways. 9 of these locomotives are preserved, the rest are scrapped. Again, it does need to be updated. So that is the LMS Fowler Class 3F or Ginty. Next up is a slightly more modern LMS locomotive, and that is the LMS Ivert Class 2 262 tank engine. And this being a retool, currently Bachmann do it, and it's not a great model from what I've seen and heard and even had myself. Again, it's designed by H.D. Ivert. There was 130 produced. They were produced between 1946 and 1952. They are a tank engine. They operated under the LMS and the BR. Only 4 of these were preserved, the rest were sadly scrapped. Again, it does need upgrading. The Bachmann one is just chunky, it's outdated, the floor is quite high up in the cab. Technology has moved a long way since that was the first made in real life, ready to run in 00. For a new tooled item, I wouldn't mind seeing the LMS 6399 Fury, which I believe is an experimental locomotive, a bit like the W1 and the turbo motive by the LMS. It is a steam-powered one. I think it was done by Henry Fowler of the LMS, and it was later rebuilt into a rebuilt Royal Scot number 6170 British Legion. Again, it's a model, especially with some manufacturers doing prototypes or one-offs. This one needs to be done for the LMS fans and people who just like odd locomotives. So the next new item I wouldn't mind seeing be made in 00, ready to run by the LMS, would be the London North Western Railway Prince of Wales class. I believe these were a slight experimental locomotive. So there was 246 of these built in real life, and they were done by Charles Brown Cook between 1911 to 1921 and then 1924. The real arrangement is a 460. They operated under the L&MR, LMS and the BR. I think it was only 6 were under the BR. Sadly, all were scrapped by the 1949. I think 6 made it into the BR, and there also is a tank version of this as well. But if you're going to tool one, you may as well do the tank version as well. So that is the LNER Prince of Wales class. The Southern region. I am going to start off with a pretty old tooled locomotive that I'd like to see retooled, and this is the South Eastern Railway R class, which is a 060T. There were 25 of these produced during 1888 to 1898. They were all withdrawn before 1943. 13 of the class were rebuilt as a R1, but all were scrapped. Again, the R1 by the South Eastern Chatham Railway, which is basically a development of the one I've just said, which is the R class. There was 13 of these, and they were rebuilds of the R class. These operated under the South Eastern Chatham Railway, the Southern Railway, the Southern region of British Railway. Again, sadly, all these were scrapped. And these are the same tank engines, they are 060T. So that is the South East Railway R class and the South Eastern Chatham Railway R1. Another retooled item, which I've probably said before, is the South Eastern Chatham N class. They were designed by Richard Mortzell. There was 80 of them built between 1917 and 1934. They are mogul design 260. They operated under the South Eastern Chatham Railway, the Southern and the British Railway. One is preserved and the rest were sadly scrapped. Bachmann do make one, or did make one. Been a while since they've released it. Again, it had a few teething troubles with the tender connection. It also could be brought up to modern standards, a bit like the N-gauge one did by Graham Farish. So that is the South Eastern Chatham Railway N class. New Southern locos, I wouldn't mind seeing the London Brighton South Coast Railway K class. Again, it's another pre-grouping locomotive by Billington. There was 17 of them actually completed and 3 were abandoned, so I think it's 20 in total. Like I said, they are a mogul design, which is a 260. They were built between 1913 and 1921. They operated under the London Brighton South Coast Railway, the Southern Railway and even the British Railway. Sadly, all of these were scrapped. which is surprising. I thought there was one at the Bluebell Railway, but there's not. So yeah, this is a pre-grouping mogul, which looks fantastic in the pre-grouping liveries, or even some of the southern liveries. Again, this is the London Brighton South Coast Railway K class. Another new tool model from the southern region of the railway would be the one that most people are talking about as I record, and that is the LSWR T3 class, which was designed by Williams Adams. They're all built at 9 Elms Works between 1892 and 1893. 20 of them were produced in real life. They are a 440 tender locomotive. They only operated under the LSWR and the southern region. One is preserved and the rest are sadly scrapped. A lot of people are asking for this model on Wishlist, the polls and chats online. It's always the T3, so that's why I've picked it. Again, it's another pre-grouping locomotive. So BR and others. Let's start with a RETOOL. And this RETOOL is one that's currently in, or was in, Hornby's railroad range, and that is the BR Standard 9F Franco Crusty boiler. And I believe there were 9 of these converted to a standard BR9F, and they have an Italian designed boiler in it basically. When they were all rebuilt after the boiler failed in real life, I think they were an 8F. Again, like I said, Hornby currently have one in their railroad range. It doesn't have any tender pickups. It has no cab details. Maybe Hornby could re-release it in a modern day one. It's only about 10 years old, but to their standard of their current 9F with die-cast boiler, flickering firebox, full cab detail, full pipe work, the whole works. Again, that is the 9F by Franco Crusty. I wouldn't mind seeing. As for a new item, I'm going to go with an Era 1. I'm not a big fan of Era 1 because of the coupling system. I really hate it. But I'm going to go to the Liverpool and Manchester Railway, and that is Planet. I believe there was only one in the UK, but I could be wrong, and that is number 9, Planet. I think they all were scrapped, but there is a replica there. Again, with the models that Hornby have produced, or even Rapido have produced, which Stephenson's Rocket, Lion, and Locomotion number 1. This is a good Liverpool and Manchester Railway that is missing from the Era 1 scenario that some manufacturers are doing. So that is Planet.